Once upon a time, deep inside a vast forest, a mysterious light shone every full moon. People whispered that a fairy lived there, dancing on flowers bathed in moonlight. But the far side of the forest was drowned in shadows, home to a Djinn, feared for his roaring voice that echoed like thunder. The fairy and the Djinn had never met, yet their legends spread across villages. One evening, a little girl wandered into the woods, chasing the glow. She saw the fairy, luminous and graceful, singing softly. The fairy looked at her and said, "This forest does not belong only to light, darkness also makes its home here." Before the girl could reply, a terrifying roar shook the trees. It was the Djinn's voice, echoing through the night. The Djinn's roar rolled through the forest like thunder. The fairy's glow flickered as fear gripped her heart. She shielded the little girl with her wings. A massive figure emerged from the shadows. His eyes burned like red lightning, his breath hot like fire. The fairy, gathering her courage, spoke, "This forest belongs to everyone. Why do you claim it only for darkness?" The Djinn growled, "Because light burns me. It reminds me of an ancient wound I cannot heal." The fairy saw the pain hidden in his words. That night, for the first time, light and shadow stood face to face, and a new tale began to unfold. The Djinn turned away, his shadowy figure trembling as though in pain. The fairy flew closer, her gentle glow brushing against him. He flinched, but did not strike. "Show me," she whispered softly. For the first time, the Djinn lowered his head. A scar, glowing faintly with dark fire, burned across his chest. "This curse keeps me bound to shadow," he said. Light tears at it like a blade. The fairy's eyes filled with compassion. "Perhaps it is not light you need to fear, but the memory that chains you." The Djinn's silence was heavier than his roar. The girl hiding behind the fairy whispered, "Maybe she can heal you." The fairy placed her hand near the Djinn's scar. Warmth radiated from her touch, not burning, but soothing. The Djinn gasped as his shadow flickered. "Why do you help me?" he asked, his voice low and uncertain. "Because no heart should live only in darkness," she replied. The Djinn looked into her shining eyes. Something stirred in him, an unfamiliar feeling of trust. He whispered, "If you stand by me, perhaps I will try to change." The little girl clapped with joy. "Then both of you can save the forest," the fairy smiled. "Together, we can face what lies ahead." And so, under the pale moonlight, light and shadow made their first fragile promise. Days passed peacefully. The fairy healed the forest, flowers bloomed brighter, and the Djinn kept away wandering beasts. But deep underground, something stirred. A shadow older and darker than the Djinn awakened. Its whispers spread like smoke, twisting branches, darkening rivers. The fairy sensed the change. "A great evil is awakening," she told the Djinn. And he clenched his fists. "I know this voice. It once commanded me in my darkest days." Fear returned to his heart, but he looked at the fairy. "This time, I am not alone." The fairy nodded. "Then we will face it together." The ground split open, and a chilling fog poured out. The shadow rose in the form of a monstrous spirit, towering higher than the trees. Its voice hissed, "Djinn, you are mine. Return to the darkness." The Djinn trembled but stood tall. "I will never serve you again." The fairy raised her light, but the shadow laughed. "Your glow cannot erase me. I am eternal." The little girl clutched the fairy's hand, whispering, "Don't let him go back." The fairy spread her wings. "Then we will bind you, so you can harm no one again." The spirit lashed out, vines turning black and lashing like whips. The fairy dodged, her glow scattering sparks, while the Djinn countered with roaring flames. The clash shook the earth. Trees cracked, rivers boiled. Villagers in the distance watched with horror. Is this the end of the forest? They cried. The fairy shouted, "Hold fast, we are not beaten." The Djinn's scar flared, pain shooting through him, but he pushed on. For the first time, he wasn't fighting for himself, he was fighting to protect. The battle paused when the spirit withdrew into the fog. The Djinn fell to his knees, panting. "You can't keep fighting with that wound," the fairy said. He looked at her, frustration in his eyes. "I am too broken. You should fight without me." The fairy knelt beside him, her glow gentle. "No, alone, I cannot win. But together, we may succeed." The Djinn stared, stunned by her faith. Slowly, he rose again. "Then I will not leave your side." For the first time, Shadow trusted light. As dawn broke, the forest itself seemed to awaken. Trees leaned toward the fairy, flowers opened wide, rivers shimmered. It was as though nature whispered, "Help us." The fairy pressed her hand to the soil. "The forest lends us strength." The Djinn placed his hand beside hers, shadow blending with glow. The ground pulsed with life. For a moment, harmony bloomed. But then the shadow spirit roared, shattering the calm. "You cannot unite what was never meant to be." The fairy and Djinn exchanged a glance. "Then let us prove you wrong." The next clash was fiercer than before. The shadow spirit struck with storms of black fire. The fairy countered with radiant beams, and the Djinn with molten earth. But something was different. Their powers did not repel each other. Instead, they merged, weaving together. Light and shadow. Together, the Djinn gasped. The fairy smiled. "Yes, this is balance." The spirit screamed as the united force pushed it back. For the first time, the villagers saw hope shining brighter than fear. With the spirit's retreat, calm returned to the forest. Birds sang again, flowers spread their fragrance. The villagers entered for the first time without fear. They marveled at the beauty that had once been hidden by darkness. The fairy turned to the Djinn. "This is only the beginning. We must keep the balance strong." The Djinn breathed deeply. "For the first time, I feel I am not a curse, but a guardian." The forest echoed with new life, but everyone knew the struggle was far from over. Not all hearts were at peace. Among the villagers, doubts grew. What if the Djinn betrays us again? A young man muttered, "He may only be pretending." Another added. The fairy defended him gently. "Trust takes time. But remember, he fought to save you." The Djinn stood silently, feeling the weight of their suspicion. Yet he clenched his fists, determined not to falter. "I will prove myself," he whispered, "even if it takes a lifetime." Not all hearts were at peace. Among the villagers, doubts grew. What if the Djinn betrays us again? A young man muttered, "He may only be pretending." Another added. The fairy defended him gently. "Trust takes time. But remember, he fought to save you." The Djinn stood silently, feeling the weight of their suspicion. Yet he clenched his fists, determined not to falter. "I will prove myself," he whispered, "even if it takes a lifetime." The peace did not last. A wave of darkness rolled in once more, colder and heavier than before. The fairy's glow flickered. "This is not the same shadow. It has grown stronger." The Djinn's jaw tightened. "Then we must stand firmer." The villagers trembled, but when they saw the Djinn step forward without fear, courage began to stir. This time, the fight would not be long only to light and shadow, but to everyone. The fairy lifted her hands, summoning the starlight above. The Djinn pressed his palms to the earth, drawing deep power. Their energies fused, creating a swirling force of balance. Light and shadow together, no longer enemies. The shadow spirit recoiled, screaming. The fairy shouted, "Darkness cannot be destroyed, but it can be bound." The Djinn thundered, "And now it obeys us, not the other way around." The darkness broke apart, and sunlight poured into the forest. Villagers cried out with joy. Children ran freely among the trees, women sang, and the air filled with laughter. The Djinn sat beneath a tree, watching quietly. This is what I fought for. Double quotes. The fairy sat beside him. Yes, this is the true meaning of light. For the first time in centuries, the forest was not feared, but cherished. But far beyond the mountains, another presence stirred. Unlike shadow or spirit, it was a cursed wraith that devoured both light and darkness. The fairy's face grew grave. "This enemy cannot be fought alone." Double quotes. The Djinn nodded. "Then we will call upon the villagers. This is no longer just our battle, it is everyone's." The villagers who once feared the forest now stood tall. Women lit torches, men sharpened tools, even children carried lanterns glowing like stars. The fairy's heart swelled. This is true strength when all stand together. The Djinn raised his voice, roaring with courage. "Tonight, we fight not as strangers, but as one." The wraith drew near, but the forest was no longer alone. The wraith spread across the sky, choking out the stars. Darkness grew so thick it smothered breath. The fairy blazed like the moon, the Djinn roared with the power of the earth, and the villagers raised their torches high. Together, they unleashed a storm of unity. The wraith shrieked, twisting and breaking apart, "You cannot unite what was never meant to be." It howled. The Djinn bellowed, "But we already have." In a flash of light, the wraith was undone. Silence followed. The forest stood alive, brighter than ever before. The fairy turned to the Djinn. "This forest is no longer of light or shadow alone, but of peace and hope." The Djinn's eyes softened. "I swear, darkness will never again enslave this land." The villagers erupted in cheer, clapping and singing. For the first time, they called the Djinn their protector. Years passed, and the forest thrived. Children grew up playing beneath its glowing canopy, unafraid. Every night, the fairy sang her songs, and the Djinn stood watch as guardian of both light and shadow. The little girl who had first met the fairy grew older. She said, "This is the world we dreamed of." The fairy smiled gently. "True magic is friendship. That is a light that never dies." And so, the story of the fairy and the Djinn lived on, told for generations as a tale of hope, courage, and unity. Moral Cologne. True strength lies not in light or darkness alone, but in understanding, compassion, and unity. The fairy taught the Djinn that even the deepest wounds can be healed with kindness, while the Djinn proved that even those once feared can protect and bring balance. The story reminds us that we should never judge others by their outer nature. Everyone carries hidden pain. Light and darkness are not enemies. Both are needed to create harmony. Healing begins when we replace fear with trust and anger with empathy. Together, even the most unlikely companions can defeat great evil. In short, love, kindness, and unity have the power to heal hearts and transform even the darkest souls.